Sir Ian Fleming's James Bond has been a Hollywood mainstay for more than 60 years. In that time, a handful of actors have brought to life the British super spy's thrilling adventures and made box office bank in the process. With the Bond property currently on hiatus as producers work on a bold new direction for the character, the great pop culture debate wants to look back at the bombs, the bad guys, and the beauties to determine the best James Bond film of all time. The Spy Who Loved Me was packing a 007, and we had a Thunderball. I'm your host, Eric Rezsnyak. Please help me welcome my panel of not-so-secret agents for this episode. First, welcome our resident Bond girl, or rather Bond woman, Carissa Kloss. Carissa, let's talk about Pussy Galore. Is that what you have or what you want?
Yes. Also, sounds like a great weekend.
Well, I know you're not Dr. Christmas Jones because she only comes once a year. Next, he's shaken but rarely stirred. It's Michael Schwartz.
Well, we can talk about my Gen X trauma later, Eric.
And for the record, folks, he likes his martinis the same way he likes his men, as dirty as possible. Finally, we have a secret agent for this episode coming to us from the Podcasters Assembled and other shows in the We Can Make This Work Probably Podcast Network. Please welcome Eric Slater.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Slater, I expect you to podcast. By the way, since there are two Erics on this episode, I will be referring to other Eric as Agent Slater to avoid confusion. And up in the producer booth, we have Curtis Creekmore menacingly stroking his cat. And yes, that is a euphemism. Curious about how we came up with these 16 films? Check out the primer available on your podcast platform of choice. Make sure you head over to greatpopculturedebate.com so you can find the downloadable listener bracket for this and every episode so you can make your own picks and play along with us at home. And with that out of the way, let's descend into my secret underwater lair so I can torture you for information. I mean, let's get on with these debates. First, the majority of the panel is betting on number one seed Casino Royale, the 2006 version starring Daniel Craig, but Michael is keeping it discreet for four seed For Your Eyes Only, the 1981 film starring Roger Moore. Michael, go on the attack as you dive for votes for Eyes. I will keep my cards close to my vest with Casino. Michael, please shoot first.
Sure, I'll be happy to. I mean, I love Casino Royale. I mean, just from the moment Bond walks out of the ocean in that little brief cut. That's memorable. But I chose For Your Eyes Only for a couple of reasons. First, nostalgia for myself, pretty much. Roger Moore was my Bond growing up. That's who I really kind of got identified with and joined the Bond franchise with and everything for us. But it has that great Sheena Easton opening number that was, it was nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Song that year and everything. It's got Julian Glover in it playing the good guy. Oh, no, wait, he's a bad guy for us. I mean, I will watch anything that has Topol in it. As well, who I absolutely love. And when it comes just down to it, I mean, there is the nymphomaniac that is BB in this film, who is like 16 years old and throwing herself at Bond. And when I was rewatching for the podcast, I gotta say, God, Roger Moore was a lot older than I thought he was. I mean, he will be my Bond. He will always be my So I think it's a great opportunity to just see a Bond, and it was right there in the middle of the Roger Moore franchise as well.
I am so glad that you mentioned the BB of it all because watching that movie, guys, I don't know if you're aware of this. Roger Moore was born in 1927. That is true, which made him somewhere around the lanes of 60 years old when he filmed this, and he's there with a 16-year-old as one of his love interests in that movie. What? The Woody Allen of it all. But no, I mean, listen, Sheena Easton, and by the way, I think she's the only music artist to appear in the opening credit of her movie.
Yes, I believe so too.
Yeah. That being said, I want us to throw it to Eric and Carissa to find out, did Michael's defense of Olympics, the James Bond film, which is how I think of Forever's Eyes Only, sway you? Eric.
I actually think this might be Moore's best outing for me. And I think the thing that really sells it is the opening. I think that opening with like the
helicopter.
Of the Blofeld story that we never really got because I think Diamonds Are Forever completely like ruined that storyline. And I felt like this was finally like a good ending to that story arc.
Yes, great. And by the way, that's Agent Slater, not Eric. That was my mistake. I've already blown my cover. Carissa, has he changed your opinion? Or are you sticking with Casino Royale?
Yeah, I'm sticking with Casino Royale. Although I do have a lot of warm feelings toward the Roger Moore Bond. I think he's my favorite of the ones we've watched. So, but yeah, not in this matchup. Sorry.
All right, then I'm going to keep my defense of Casino Royale undercover because it sounds like we're 3-1, and we will be moving Casino Royale into round 2. Next, in a Timothy Dalton off, it's a unanimous victory for 1989's License to Kill, a 3 seed, which meant that 1987's The Living Daylights, a 2 seed, was blown away. That being said, does anyone want to debrief on Living Daylights? Eric, I know you had some thoughts on it.
So yeah, I thought Living Daylights was a pretty great movie. Unfortunately, I think the ending doesn't quite stick the landing. I think it lacked a proper villain, and it kind of ends on a whimper after such a great start. Dalton's amazing in it.
I'm trying to remember who the quote-unquote villain in that one is. I just watched it like 2 days ago, but that says how many of these I've watched over the past 2 days.
I probably couldn't tell you.
The only thing I remember of that one, that's the one where it's the cellist girlfriend, right?
That's right, yeah. That's one of the highlights of the movie.
Yeah, you know who the villain is? It's the guy who keeps coming back in all of the
Brosnan movies. Yeah,
Brosnan. Which I was like, why did you take
Jack
the bad
Wade.
guy? I think it's Joe Don Baker is his name.
Yeah, that's the actor, yeah.
Why would you take the big bad from one of the movies that happened like 6 years before and then make him a recurring good guy in your butt? Like, there were no other actors available?
It doesn't make any sense. I feel like they were trying to reinvent like the J.W. Pepper character from like the Roger Moore movies with him. But yeah, it's weird casting.
It is. By the way, we can leave that Pepper alone. Thank you very much. But great job talking about Daylights. We are going to move License to Kill into round 2. Next, moving on, the panel is evenly split between 2 Roger Moore flicks. 1977's The Spy Who Loved Me, a 1 seed, and 1983's Octopussy, a 4 seed. Agent Slater, you don't have to get XXX as you infiltrate the opposing forces and stump for Spy Who Loved Me. Carissa, use all your arms to swing the votes to Octopussy. Carissa, please go first.
Yeah, this one is a fun one. So my rubric for these movies is all over the place, but one of the things that I love the most isn't the opening credit sequence. It's the mise en scène, like starting in the middle action sequence that these movies open with, and they get progressively more ridiculous as they go on. This one has the tiny plane with the fold-out wings getting loaded off a horse trailer, and then barnstorming through the barn, and they try to close the doors, and oops, the bombs are now locked in, and the barn gets blown up. It's so fun and ridiculous. I loved it so much from the beginning. It's Roger Moore's 6th of 7 films. Maud Adams plays Octopussy. The main storyline involves a fake Fabergé egg and a real one, and a tracking device that somehow gets mixed in. The Soviets are the enemy. We go to West Berlin, India, England, and also Utah for some of the
how exotic
desert. At least that's where they were filmed. Yeah, I just really enjoyed every single bit about this. The Octopussy stuff is ridiculous. Like she just, they're doing flips into hay bales. I don't even know. But this one was great fun. And so I have to move it forward here.
Excellent. Agent Slater, talk to us about The Spy Who Loved Me.
Sure. So apologies to the Roger Moore fans out there, Michael and Carissa. Moore is not my guy. That said, I do think he's got a couple good movies in him, and The Spy Who Loves Me is definitely one of them. Yeah. I think it's one of the better. It's a dumb, fun, turn your brain off popcorn movie at its core. Whereas Octopussy doesn't quite get there for me. And the title I can't get past. But for all its faults, Spy Who Loved Me gives us Jaws, one of the most iconic henchmen in the entire franchise. And Octopussy just gives us Octopussy.
Which that's a selling point for me, but I get it.
And hey, does Octopussy have a submarine car? I don't think so.
No, I get it.
That's a great point. Submarine car goes to The Spy Who Loved Me. Michael Schwartz, where are you on this one?
Oh, I'm sticking with Octopussy because even if you just look at it by our basic rubric that we decide whether we want or not, Octopussy had a bigger impact on popular culture. More people will remember the name of that film, I think.
I'm sticking with Spy Who Loved Me for 2 reasons. Number one, I love this movie. I think it's great. I think the female Russian spy is awesome in it. I wish they gave her a little bit more to do, but I enjoyed seeing her play off James. I thought they had a great chemistry, and I love the third act reveal that James had killed her lover, and it's shocking, whatever. I think there's some awesome action sequences in it. But also, when I was a kid, my father somehow got his hands on an Octopussy movie poster, which he put up in our bedroom closet. And as a young homosexual who did not know what was happening, but knew that was really weird and was very uncomfortable with it. And so I was like emotionally and mentally scarred by the Octopussy poster. I'm sticking with Spy Who Loved Me. It's a split decision, and Spy Who Loved Me is a 1 seed, Octopussy is a 4 seed, which means that Spy Who Loved Me will continue into round 2. Next, it's another unanimous victory, this time for 2 seed Skyfall from 2012, which meant that we had no more need of 3 seed The World Is Not Enough from 1999. Does anyone want to speak on Enough? Agent Slater, do you have thoughts?
Not so much. Not on that one.
This is the Denise Richards Bond girl movie, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
On paper, Denise Richards is a great 90s Bond girl. That should have worked. The problem was making her a nuclear physicist named Dr. Christmas Jones. And there was nowhere for us to go. There was no place. It was over right there and then. Someone thought they were very clever when they came up with that. And no one was saying to them, you know what? Maybe we just take a pass on this one. Maybe like literally any other job for Denise Richards and any other name, but we didn't. So Skyfall will continue into round 2. Next, the panel is Seeing Red and currently set to move forward 1 seed from Russia with Love from 1963. But Carissa prefers the freaky deaky island shenanigans of 1973's Live and Let Die, a 4 seed. Michael convinced us that Russia should march forward into round 2. Carissa summoned the voodoo powers of Baron Samedi to push for Live and Let Die. And as a heads up, there may be an agent who is looking to defect on this one. Michael, please launch your special military exercise first.
I mean, okay, so From Russia, it's classic. It's the second film in the Bond series altogether for us. Sean Connery's got his feet under him after doing Dr. No, and now we really get this for us. We have the continuation of the line with Spectre, and they want to take revenge for the killing of Dr. No. I think this is what really, I think, helps solidify what becomes classic Bond for us. You know, the Dr. No, fantastic, mind you. But I think that the From Russia with Love is really what solidifies people as like Sean Connery is really James Bond, really accepts that, really builds that franchise that goes on for another however many films he ends up doing, going away and coming back and going away and coming back. And everything, and gives us that George Lansbury nightmare in between. But, you know, for us. But I think that this is what you think of when you think of classic Bond for us. It gives us the real, I want to say, like structure that becomes the how we do every other Bond film. We've got our villains, we've got our multiple locations, we've got our love interest, and just really good action in this one for everybody. And I think that's why everybody voted for it.
Carissa. Yeah, great. Carissa, I'm excited to hear you talk about Live and Let Die.
I mean, I think everything that Michael said is exactly right. It's such right. From Russia with Love is such a Bond movie. If you think about a Bond movie, you're probably going to conjure elements of this. You will not be conjuring elements of Live and Let Die, which is bananas. Because this is a Bond movie, but it is a blaxploitation film. It is from 1973, like the height of the blaxploitation movement, and it's like the Bond people were like, what's popular right now? Let's see what we can do. It's Roger Moore's first. It's the 8th overall in the series. Our locations include New York City, but Harlem, New Orleans, and someplace in the Caribbean that's maybe Jamaica. The storyline is that there's a Harlem drug lord that is working on a heroin distribution monopoly through some very nefarious and clever scheming. This movie also has the first Black Bond girl, played by Gloria Hendry. So, you know, the film is this series is trying to maybe make up from some of the really problematic stuff from the 60s.
By giving us more problematic stuff.
Right. Yes, because we also get in this film an effervescent Jane Seymour, who plays a woman named Solitaire, who's a future-seeing psychic who can read tarot cards until Bond takes her virginity, which is when she loses her entire sixth sense. Yes. This movie has everything. We have Bond running over crocodiles after throwing raw chicken at them and not washing his hands. There are so many snakes in this movie. There's a shark tank. There's a speedboat chase in the bayou, which is kind of amazing. There's like land jumping. They accidentally sent a Guinness World Record while making this, like with the speedboat jump. There's a double-decker bus chase, and one of the villains dies by swallowing an exploding gas pellet. So Bond makes him eat this thing, and then he explodes. This movie is amazing. It is bananas. It is not like any of the other Bonds, and that's why it needs to be here.
That was epic. Thank you so much, Carissa. Agent Slater, where are you on this one?
Which one, Live and Let Die, or
Live and Let Die, or this From Russia with Love? Which one are you fighting?
To me, this is an easy one. From Russia with Love. Absolutely. Now, Live and Let Die is fun, but From Russia with Love, it leans into the espionage spycraft angle in the best way. And I think it's maybe the most grounded, or one of the most grounded Bond movies. And I think it totally works. It's probably the closest to the book as well.
For sure. And it's a great, I am switching my vote, and I'll tell you why. I wouldn't pull up my text because I had to do this. I'm watching Live and Let Die over the weekend, and I literally text Chris this. I'm watching Live and Let Die, and this movie is fucking wild. This is crazy. My jaw keeps dropping. I'm having the best time. Like, it is crazy. Everything she mentioned, and she left out like half of the crazy stuff that happens in that movie. It is nuts. I'm switching it because it is the most wacko thing I've ever seen in a Bond film. It doesn't matter because we're tied, and From Russia with Love is a 1 seed, Live and Let Die is a 4 seed, but I just have to tell you what a hoot this film is. I mean, it's deeply problematic, but I just loved every second of it. Anyway, we're moving From Russia with Love into round 2. Next, the panel is currently split over the beginning and end of 60s Bond. 1969's On Her Majesty's Secret Service, a 2 seed, and 1962's Dr. No, a 3 seed. Agent Slater, do your best to keep Secret Service, like George Lazenby, from being a one and done. I will explain why we should say yes to no. Agent Slater, please go first.
Yes, sir. This was a tough one for me. These were both neck and neck in my top 10. Dr. No, obviously a classic. It's the OG, but ultimately, On Her Majesty's Secret Service just blows it out of the water. This is one of the most unique and impactful Bond movies. Lazenby's one and only outing as the character. We get one of the coolest, pun intended, villain layers of all time.
Yes.
And Telly Savalas as Blofeld is just amazing. Hands down, one of the best Bond villains, I think. I love the opening sequence. It recaps the previous movies, which I thought was kind of interesting. We establish a through line with the Spectre subplot from the previous movies. We don't often get that in the later movies. They become really episodic from here on out. As one of the best theme songs with Louis Armstrong's All the Time in the World. Which gets me every time. Like, if you don't have any kind of emotional reaction to those lyrics, you might be dead.
Yeah, and spoiler for the end of that. No, I'm just kidding. Go on.
No, yeah. To top it off, the movie ends on a downbeat. We get that, of course, iconic, tragic cliffhanger.
Indeed, we do. And I reacted when he was talking about Telly Savalas as Blofeld. It was not a negative reaction. I think he's peerless in that role. There's multiple other Blofelds, and none of them even come close to Telly Savalas. He's so good in that role. And I actually loved his plot in this movie. Like, it's really smart and incredibly complicated, but it was like, you know what? Good for her. Like, she has a plan and she's making it happen. He's palpitating. I love it.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about Dr. No, but I'll say right now I'm very open to switching my vote because I had never watched Secret Service until I started doing my research for this episode, and it's easily one of my favorite Bond films. It's so good. I think it's as I was just mentioning, one of the best iterations of a Bond villain, and it has one of my all-time favorite Bond girls. By the way, Chris and I are going to collaborate on a top 10 Bond girls that'll be up on our website by the time you listen to this episode. It has unbelievable set pieces, action sequences. It's great. It also looks terrific. But Dr. No's the OG, right? The original Bond. We wouldn't be doing this episode if it wasn't good, if it didn't have a hook or pincers. Apologies to Dr. No himself. This was the audience's first big screen introduction to James Bond, and so many of the ingredients were great from the start. Sean Connery was the perfect first Bond. He was a paragon of 60s virile masculinity. He's a bruiser, a chauvinist, a guy who does whatever he wants to whoever he wants because he can. Deeply problematic to 21st century audiences. But in the 60s, It was exactly what the audience wanted to see. Men wanted to be him, women wanted to fuck him, and some men did too. There are also so many classic Bondisms that are established here. The beautiful Bond girl brought to life by Ursula Andress's Honey Rider, with that iconic ocean arrival that's echoed, 50 years later, or 40 years later, with Casino Royale and Daniel Craig. A bizarre villain with an over-the-top plot for world domination, an elaborate secret hideout, incompetent henchmen. We won't mention the race swapping of Joseph Wiseman's Dr. No, who is supposed to be Chinese. We get M, we get Moneypenny, we get Q. So it's the primacy argument, the beginning of Bond's film career versus the end of his first decade, a highly transitory movie that sets up all the things that Bond can be. Where will you vote? Carissa?
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but I think that the Bond films for me get better overall. When I was doing my bracket research, I watched them chronologically, and I'm so glad I did, because I think going back to an early one, having seen Casino Royale, the stunts are lesser. The Bond is more bumbling. Like early Bond is a little, he bobbles his knife or his gun and all the things. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is one of the most fun ones I watch for this. I'm 100% still behind it. I mean, the skiing alone.
Yeah. The skiing is that whole skiing sequence is incredible.
It's so fun.
Michael Schwartz, where are you on this one?
I'm sticking with Dr. No, primacy argument here. It's like, if we don't have anything else without it, Connery and the whole team on that one really sets the mood that comes that every other film that follows comes from.
Yeah, no, it's true. I agree. I'm going to keep my vote with Dr. No. It doesn't matter. It's a split decision, and Secret Service is the 2 seed. Dr. No's a 3. So Secret Service will continue into round 2. We're going to wrap round 1 up with 2 unanimous victories that are, appropriately enough, both golden. 1 seed GoldenEye from 1995 stole the thunder of 4 seed Thunderball from 1965, while 2 seed Goldfinger from 1964 ensured that the sun would not come out for 3 seed Tomorrow Never Dies from 1997. Anyone have any thoughts on Thunderball? I'll say Tomorrow Never Dies. I just rewatched this last night. It's solid. I think Jonathan Pryce is a great villain. I think the idea of a Rupert Murdoch as the bad guy was really forward thinking at that point in the 90s. It was actually pretty cutting edge. And I'm waiting for the next iteration of like a social, like, where's the Elon Musk Bond villain? It's coming.
That's up next.
It's happening, right? But doing this in 97 was pretty bold, I think. And I think Michelle Yeoh is, frankly, she was better than the movie that didn't give her enough to do. They're just like, hey, everyone likes those Jackie Chan movies. Let's have a Bond girl who's Jackie Chan. Great, give her a character too. And I thought Terry Hatcher was fun as a kind of the early Bond girl who's tragic. I don't know if there are any other examples of women who Bond stooped earlier in his life, who then he reconnects with later, and then get the old as one does. Any thoughts on Thunderball? Anyone?
Well, I mean, the other thing about Thunderball too is that was the basis for Never Say Never Again too. They use that same concept because I mean the storyline is great enough that they used it twice, once in Eon and one non-Eon film for it with Sean Connery.
Can't get enough. All right, so that being said, we will move both GoldenEye and Goldfinger into round 2, and that's the end of round 1. We're going to take a quick break to check out what's new with the Q unit, which just means we're going to a gay bar. We'll be right back after these messages.
$5 can't buy you much these days. In the 90s, a Big Mac Extra Value Meal rang in at $4.59. Today, that same meal will cost you $7.89 and leave you filled with regret. You know who would never do that to you? The Great Pop Culture Debate. For just $5 a month, our Patreon supporters gain access to a treasure trove of unaired content, like those secret fries at the bottom of the bag. So if you're hungry for some delicious pop culture content, pass on the Big Mac and head to greatpopculturedebate.com to become a Patreon supporter today. Now I'm hungry.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the PrizePicks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on PrizePicks for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
And we're back for round 2 of our Best James Bond Film debate. Before we get into the Elite 8, I want our panelists to share their social media, what else they're working on, and also who their favorite Bond actor was. Carissa, why don't you start?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Carissa Kloss, but if you actually want to interact with me, you should become a Patreon, join our Discord. I'm very active there talking about all kinds of things and not really working on anything else except for a lot more podcast research, so stay tuned. There's some good stuff in the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite Bond is Roger Moore.
Because he was the one you grew up with?
No, I don't really remember making a distinction. I think a lot of the Sean Connery ones were the ones I watched with my dad when I was growing up. But in revisiting them, I really enjoyed them.
Great. Awesome.
I liked his section the most, I think.
Cool. Thank you very much. Michael, what are your socials? What else are you working on? Who's your favorite Bond?
So I'm on Instagram, Therax329. That's THERAX329 on Instagram. Can come and drop in my DMs if you want to tell me what I'm wrong about any of the panels that I happen to be on. Mm-hmm. And I know that I'm wrong in many cases, or at least that's what the rest of the panelists tell me. After I'm done with this, I get to start researching for my next podcast recording for season 9 that I do next week. So I got to get my stuff together for that one still, too.
It's Best Batman Villain, I think?
I'm doing Best Batman Villain next week, so that should be fun. Yes.
Your favorite Bond?
My favorite Bond, I grew up with Roger Moore. I would say, let's make it a Bond 3-way. I want to go fighting with Sean Connery. I want to hang out with Roger Moore, but I want to sleep with Daniel Craig.
Interesting. I think I would reverse that order, but I get where you're coming from. Thank you very much. Agent Eric Slater, what are your socials? What are you working on in your favorite Bond?
Sure thing. So I'm a published author and podcaster. You can find me all over social media at Eric Slater. That's Eric with a K, Slater with a D, D as in Delta. My latest book is $22.99, a sci-fi noir novella. I've also got a few other things in the works coming out hopefully this year. And I'm currently involved in a dozen podcasts, but mainly Nerdyagram, an Enneagram podcast with my wife, Megan, the Super Switch Club, a Nintendo podcast, Epic Fails of History, that's Epic with a K, and Podcasters Assemble, where we covered all the Bond movies way back on season 3. And we're currently making our way through Studio Ghibli.
And you should totally check them out. They're awesome people. They have been wonderful friends to us in this podcast. I don't know how you all do it, because one podcast is like driving me nuts in the best way. But 12 podcasts, God bless you. That's what I have to say. Yeah.
Well, not quite. That was sort of an exaggeration, but not by much.
Not by much. Your favorite Bond?
It's got to be Daniel Craig. He manages to be both one of the most lethal versions of the character, while also humanizing him in a way we've never quite seen before. And of course, it's a more modern take, a little bit more nuance in there, and I really appreciate that about it.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we're so glad that you could join us. You've been a wonderful addition to our panel for this episode, so thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, our pleasure. So you can find me at Eric Rezsnyak on Instagram, or just message at Great Pop Culture Debate on Insta or TikTok, or at GPCD on Mastodon. But what you really need to do right now is sign up for our weekly newsletter, new every Monday at noon, that tells you about everything new in pop culture that week. Sign up by finding the link on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or via our link tree on any of our social media accounts. So it's my podcast, so I can break the rules. And I actually like each of the Bonds for very different reasons. I can't pick a favorite. I think they all bring a different essential ingredient to the character. Connery was a thug. Lazenby gave us our original emo Bond. Moore was a total sleazeball, which is why I love that Chris is enamored of him. Dalton was intense. Brosnan was dashing. And then Craig is a stone cold killer. They're all different elements of Bond. I think they all do something different, much like the Doctor over during the break. Michael Schwartz, who's a big Doctor Who fan as well, commented there's a lot of similarities between these two franchises, and I think that's true, and something we'll discuss more as we move on in this episode. Also, it's time for a Patreon shout out. Thank you to Gabriel Manchin, who has been a supporter of our podcast since we started. Our mission would be unsuccessful without your help, so thank you very much, Gabe. Now let's move into round 2 before the sharks attack. Why is it always sharks? First, the majority of the panel continues to try its luck with 2006's Casino Royale, but Carissa is aiming to keep 1989's License to Kill in the running. Agent Slater, I'm authorizing the additional $5 million stake for you to buy into round 2 for Casino. Carissa, be relentless in your pursuit of votes for license, as Bond was for revenge against those drug kingpins. Carissa, please go first.
Yeah, I think I'm probably tipping my hand a little here by just revealing that apparently the Bond movies that I like the most are the like weird ones that don't fit into the formula in one way or another. This one is from 1989. It's Timothy Dalton's 2 of 2, and this is my favorite one of all the ones that I watched. Dozen plus for this, like recently for this bracket. This is the 16th film, and this is Bond on a personal revenge mission for good reason. But his license to kill is revoked. He is no longer sanctioned to do what he's doing, and he does not care. He is going against the drug smugglers that killed the wife of his best friend right at their wedding, and then maimed him by dunking him in a tank of sharks. Made his best friend's husband. I know.
Times with the shark beaming.
And I just love when the villains use sharks as a weapon in this series. Like, it's one of my favorite things. This movie also has a decompression chamber death that is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I also love when they explode people. It's really fun. This has Chekhov's cigarette lighter best man gift that becomes real handy at the exact moment needed. There's underwater sequences. There's barefoot water skiing. This isn't the most exotic of locales as far as the Bond movies go. We're in Mexico City and the Keys, Cancun, someplace that's based on Panama. We also get Carrie Lowell as a very short-haired, very 80s, like shoulder pads to her ears kind of Bond girl, and a really fun cameo from Wayne Newton as a televangelist. I completely understand why this won't move forward, but this one was such great fun. I loved every second of it, and I like kind of the darker, edgier Bond, and this is Timothy Dalton is like on his way out here, and he plays like that. So I had to at least talk about it here.
I love it. And I have to say that Wayne Newton cameo was not only a great cameo, but it was also an ingenious, again, I love it when the bad guys actually are smart. What a brilliant idea that was to have a televangelist essentially selling cocaine, and only the people who are buying it know what's going on. Like, I'm like, who came up with this? This is really smart.
I know, 1989,
snaps to them, you know? Also, I love it when Carrie Lowell steals her money back from him as he's running away. That I actually applauded at that. Agent Slater, talk to us about Casino Royale.
Look, to start, I really do think that the Dalton era of Bond is often overlooked. He was a damn good Bond.
Yep.
That said, Casino Royale is hands down one of the best Bond movies of all time. It flips all the tropes, completely reboots the franchise with modern sensibilities, gives us an origin story for the character for the first time, and introduces us to the total badass that is Daniel Craig. It's got an incredible cold open, an amazing opening sequence, that Chris Cornell song. The pace just doesn't slow down. And we get one of the most intense gambling scenes in film.
Yeah,
like the intensity, and I couldn't care less about those scenes in other Bond movies, but in this one, it's captivating. The cast is on fire. Judi Dench, Mads Mikkelsen, Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright Felix is best Felix.
Yeah, totally.
And Ava Green as Vesper. Enough said. Casino Royale reinvented the character for modern audiences, and even though it went back to the original source material, it also completely broke with tradition in several ways. After the first 20 movies played it relatively safe. So yeah, Daniel Craig, again, one of the best Bonds in my book, and he's the only Bond to date that gets both a beginning and an ending. Excellent points. Michael Schwartz, where are you on this one?
I'm sticking with Casino Royale on this one. Again, it goes back to the point that Eric just made about that. It reboots everything. Even though it's a short time between the last Brosnan film and Daniel Craig coming in, it's not that long of a hiatus as other. It really gives a new, fresh feel to all of the Bonds, which gives us the chance to continue this conversation and add more Bond films. And I'm very curious to see where we go after Daniel Craig.
Yeah, same. And I just want to echo the opening credit sequence for Casino Royale is like, I could just watch that on a loop because every time I watch it, I see more things. Whoever designed that is a genius. And just the opening credits themselves are works of art. So
Amen.
Yeah.
I'm sticking with Casino Royale here. I love everything you said about License to Kill. It's a lot of fun, and it's very much a Lethal Weapon movie as a Bond movie, and that's not in any way casting aspersions on it, because those are great movies as well. But it was a lot of fun. It's just up against Casino Royale. So,
like, who doesn't want to parachute into their wedding? I don't know. It's just, this I understand why it's moving forward. It's just such great fun, and I don't know that I had seen one of the Timothy Dalton ones before we started doing this research, because there's only 2 of them. But man, I really, really, really loved this one. So if you haven't seen it and you're a fan of the later Craig, like the grittier kind of Bond, you might really like this film.
Agree. Justice for Timothy Dalton across the board. Thank you very much. So we are moving Casino Royale into the final 4. Next, I believe we are unanimous in our support for 2012 Skyfall, which assassinated the chances of 1977's The Spy Who Loved Me, which again is a great spycraft movie in particular. Really enjoyed watching it. It's one of the great early, well, not early, I guess it's mid, but it's a lot of fun. Totally worth watching. The bad guy's base in that movie, I think, is the coolest design of any bad guy base in any Bond film. It's awesome.
Also, the Austin Powers source material stuff is really evident. So, I mean, also Spy Who Shagged Me. But if you've seen those and then you go back and watch these, you definitely see everything that they stole and why and how they stole it.
For sure. Do I make you horny? No, he doesn't do that. Next, it's a 60s Bond showdown between the George Lazenby 1969 On Her Majesty's Secret Service and Sean Connery's 1963 From Russia with Love. I'm going to go around the horn for votes on this one. I'm going to start with Michael. Where are you voting on this one?
I honestly am torn here. I know that I argued for From Russia with Love in the last round and everything like that, but like getting shut down with Dr. No and having Her Majesty's Secret Service move on, I think I'm going to go with Her Majesty's Secret Service this time.
Okay, great. Agent Slater, where are you on this one?
Again, this is a tough one, but I think I'm going to have to go with On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Carissa.
Yeah, look at this upset. I'm with On Her Majesty's Secret Service too. I think it's such great fun, and I just love like the action sequences. These movies always give you something different, and this one was so great with the skiing shooting stuff was so fun. So I have to give it to here.
And the road rally, that's a great sequence too.
It's so fun.
I don't think there's a down moment in that entire film. And Tracy is in my opinion, top 5 Bond girl. She's so good. If you're listening to this podcast and you don't know who I'm talking about, Diana Rigg, aka Lady Olenna Tyrell from Game of Thrones, in her prime, starts off as a ball buster who has zero time for James Bond whatsoever. And by the end of the movie, she is a amazing Bond girl. She's kicking ass on her own regard. It also includes her father punching her in the face, which I would literally was just like, that man just punched his grown-ass woman in the face. I think that's the 60s were a wild time, but we're going to make it a clean sweep for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Finally, in round 2, it's a gold off. The majority of the panel wants 1995's GoldenEye to come out Xenia on a top, but Carissa prefers the campy caper of 1964's Goldfinger. Carissa, make like Pussy Galore's Flying Circus and gas up the chances of Goldfinger. Michael, call down the satellite to blow away all competition for GoldenEye. Michael, please go first.
So one of the things that I want to talk about in this is the terms of like GoldenEye actually had a bigger, like a nice impact on popular culture. It gave us an actual video game that became the first real video game that was based on the James Bond video for the Nintendo 64 system. So it became super popular. Whether that was the game itself or from some spillover from the movie or whatever, it's great. But this is Pierce Brosnan, of course, doing this. And I think that it's just a well-done film. Now, Goldfinger is classic Bond for you. But I think that I almost think that this might be Brosnan's best film. And I know I've been on the wrong side of a lot of things for us, but it's a personal feeling for us. I just like the way that we connect in the storyline for this. But again, I keep coming back to its impact on pop culture, it went beyond anything that Goldfinger ever did.
For sure. And I would say for many people, GoldenEye is an entry point into the Bond series, period, regardless of if you knew anything before or even after. A fun fact about that game, if you're doing 4-player mode, which is all I ever played, I never played the story mode, you can play basically all of the previous Bond villains and all the previous Bond girls. So it really is kind of like a Rosetta Stone for the entirety of Bond up to that point. Carissa, talk to us about Goldfinger.
Yeah, Goldfinger is the third film, Sean Connery, 1964. It was the first blockbuster. The budget for this film was the same as the first two combined. The toy Aston Martin car was the biggest toy of 1964. This is the first time that Bond realized cultural impact and how to exploit it in a consumerist kind of place. This has Jill, one of the early Bond girls, who dies of skin suffocation from being painted gold, and she appears on the cover of Life magazine. This movie was making a cultural impact at that time, and I mean, I will argue we don't get GoldenEye if we don't have Goldfinger. But sure. Goldfinger is so great because the Goldfinger Bond is clever. He's tricky. He blackmails Goldfinger. He makes some kind of alliance with Pussy Galore. She is the proprietor of Pussy Galore's Flying Circus, an all-female team of pilots. Like, come on. This movie checks all my boxes.
All your boxes.
I mean, for real. There's a laser on a table. The Chinese government is trying to irradiate the U.S.'s gold so that it can't be used for decades. It's a long-term villainous plot. There's a gunshot through a plane window that sucks someone out the window. Like, I love this stuff. The decompression deaths are the best. And then all female pilots. It's just, where do we go here? We go to the US, UK, Switzerland. It's not the most, adventurous, but it does have the interline, which Agent Slater referenced. Mr. Bond, do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Come on. This is grade A dialogue. We love this. This is why we love the franchise. I'm with Goldfinger here. I also don't like the Pierce Brosnan Bond, so that helps sway me.
A great argument. Agent Slater, where are you on this one?
This is another super tough call because I love both of these movies. I think with Goldfinger, you get the iconic white tuxedo with the red carnation. Just, yeah, I love that image. And then you got, in GoldenEye, you got Sean Bean as 006, who actually manages to die twice in the movie, which is incredible. So, and that laser, if I have to pick one, the laser watch does it for me. I'm going to go with GoldenEye.
Okay. Goldfinger is such a hoot. It is like, of the classic Bonds, I think it's probably my favorite. It's just a riot. The plot is wacky, but it's still really gripping. And it's a great, this portly man should not be a threat, but he's really threatening.
Excuse you, his name is Auric Goldfinger.
Thank you very much. Put some respect on his name, the man with the Midas touch.
Auric,
I love it. Very subtle. So good. But GoldenEye also is thrilling. I will say, I think GoldenEye would be improved if they chopped about 20 minutes out of that movie, because it sags in end of Act 2, beginning of Act 3. But we have not even talked about Famke Janssen's, what's her name? Xenia Onatopp, who is chef kiss. Of the bad Bond girls, there is nobody better than Xenia Onatopp. She kills men by fucking them to death. She's everything I want to be. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And Famke is so pussy in this movie, and I don't mean pussy galore. I mean, she is pussy. She's so hot. I love it. So I am giving it to GoldenEye here. I'm sorry, Carissa.
That's fine. I can't believe you're voting against your Connery.
I know. I love Sean Connery. I want him to. He can put his thing in me sideways, but I have to go with the better movie, and I do think GoldenEye is the better movie. So that is it, folks. We have our final four. We're going to take a quick break to flirt harmlessly with poor cock-blocked Moneypenny. We'll be right back after these messages. Do you suffer from phomophobia? That's the fear of missing out on important events that connect you to the world. You don't want to be the only person at work not talking about the most recent episode of the show everyone's dying to watch, right? Why not sign up for the Great Pop Culture Debate's free weekly newsletter? You'll get a curated list of upcoming releases in TV, music, film, and games, so you'll never be left out of the conversation. Avoid the FOMO. Head to greatpopculturedebate.com and subscribe today. And we are back with the final four of our best James Bond film debate. At this point of the show, I always like to take a step back and see if the final four matches up with where I thought we would go. I am a little bit surprised that Dr. No is not here, just from the primacy argument. But I think we really have nothing prior. Well, we have a 69 on Her Majesty's Secret Service. We have a 90s with GoldenEye, and then two Daniel Craig ones that could be recency bias talking, if we're being honest. I mean, Roger Moore was our most prolific Bond, and none of his made it. But I think we can also agree that those were of varying qualities.
Having watched these chronologically, what struck me is that as the films went along, the Bonds got better, like less bumbling, more clever. There were jumps that Brosnan and Craig were making first, like onto a moving plane, which would have taken the early Bonds. Like he would have tried a couple times, right? Like the Bond became more sort of superhero-ish. And I mean, honestly, it's better, having watching the newer stuff and then going back, like some of it feels a little hokey, right? Like the stunts aren't as good. Some of it just feels just a little maybe formulaic or whatever. So it makes sense to me because I do think the Bonds improved over time. And I think the Craig movies are really good movies, really good Bond movies and really good action movies and just good films.
Yeah, I will say of the classic ones, everything you just mentioned, I think On Her Majesty's Secret Service is the one that checks off all those boxes. It looks beautiful. It's very daring. It has some shocking action sequences that even by today's standards are really impressive. So I think it is correct. Michael, any thoughts on this?
I mean, I'm definitely here for the Secret Service for this one. I think it's the better option on that side of the bracket for us.
Okay, well, we're going to get to those votes. Let's, Agent Slater, do you think this is the correct final four?
Oh, yeah, I think these are all valid.
Great. I will take valid. Thank you for validating me. All right, we're going to jump into it and we're going to go around the horn. First up, it's 2006's Casino Royale, a 1 seed, versus 2012's Skyfall, a 2 seed. It's a Craig off, and I'm going to start with Carissa. Where are you on this one?
This is kind of tough for me because I really like Casino Royale. I really like the casino part of it, just generally, like the gameplay and the kind of the stress while you're waiting to see what's going to happen because stuff is out of people's control. But I'm going with Skyfall here. I think I like the grittier Bonds, and this one has kind of like a childhood trauma revisiting potential stuff. It becomes a more personal Bond. He's not just on a mission. A lot of this is personal, and I like when Bond gets personal. So I'm with Skyfall here.
It's not personal. It's drag.
It's Bond.
It's Bond. Michael Schwartz, where are you?
This was a struggle for me, too, because I got to say that when I did my initial bracket, Skyfall, who's came out on top for me. And I agree with Carissa. It's like you get that the childhood trauma back on the estate at the end of it, fighting in the family home, and everything that just kind of leads up to that. And I think it's such a delve into the actual history of Bond, like who he was, where he came from, and everything like that. I'm reminded that I did just recently rewatch For Your Eyes Only, and it opens in the scene with the cemetery with his parents' tombstone there. But that's all you ever get in a lot of the previous Bonds. But this is like you really get some more backstory of who Bond was and where he came from. On the other hand, Casino Royale is just from the opening scene to him almost dying of poison in the car, to that torture scene where he's in that chair. It's really hard to pick because I think they're both very different films and give us a lot of different items that might appeal to us as Bond fans in the end for us. But I think in the end, I'm going to throw my vote to Casino Royale for this one.
I will say that the torture scene in Casino Royale, I had really complicated thoughts about because on the one hand, it's terrible. On the other hand, it's butt naked Daniel Craig sitting in a chair. And I was just like, oh, how do I deal with it? How do I process? Anyway, Agent Slater, talk to us. Casino Royale versus Skyfall.
So as I mentioned, Daniel Craig's my guy. These are easily two of the best 007 movies out there. So it's a hard choice. As I mentioned, Casino Royale reinvented the character for modern audiences and, just kind of reinvigorated the series. Skyfall, on the other hand, gave us a typical Bond adventure, but the best version of that. Whereas like the Casino Royale kind of flipped all the tropes. Sam Mendes decided to go back to formula for Craig's third outing and just gave us a basic, like modernized, by the numbers Bond movie. He knocks it out of the park. And I think, yeah, it works, you know. You got that incredible cold open, the amazing cinematography in Shanghai, the heart-wrenching ending in the Scottish Highlands. But if I have to pick one, if there's a gun pointed at me and they tell me
it's a golden gun, yeah.
Casino Royale wins it.
Okay. I'm also going with Casino Royale here, and I'll say this: what Skyfall does a lot of things right. Great theme song, by the way, by Adele. We'll do that ultimately, but I think you have an amazing villain in Javier Bardem, who at one point throws a train at someone, which I remember sitting in the theater like, that bitch just threw a train at that man, and I was just like, clap for him. But someone once told me the second half of Skyfall is James Bond in Home Alone, and once I saw that, I can't unsee it. And it kind of deflates the film for me. It's true. It's like literally Home Alone. And it makes it a little more silly to me to a degree. There is nothing silly about Casino Royale. It is a perfect piece, I think, and it's actually very daring in so many ways that we're going to talk about more because it's in the final two. But let's get to this last part of the final four. It's 1969's On Her Majesty's Secret Service, a 2 seed, versus 1995's GoldenEye, a 1 seed. I want to start with Michael on this one.
I think it would be criminal to go into the final two without there being a Sean Connery film in this one for us.
Well, he's not in there.
I'm sorry. But the 60s. I'm sorry. Sure. Late
You're
night,
good.
long day. Having that, I think that's more emblematic of Bond overall than GoldenEye is, which is, I think, still a good film, and I really enjoy it and everything. But I think On Her Majesty's Secret Service takes this one hands down when you put them side by side.
Great, thank you. Agent Slater.
Again, these are some of my favorite Bond movies, so this is like really tough. But I think, as much as On Her Majesty's Secret Service is a classic, I think it's also a little dated, and I think GoldenEye holds up incredibly well, considering it's like mid-90s. I think it's still up there,
It's almost 30 years old. Just FYI to everybody on this podcast.
Dust.
I know. Dust.
Shut up, Eric.
It's like that scene in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
It's exactly that.
That's how
Welcome to
I
our
feel.
lives. Yep.
Yeah.
So I hear that you're voting for GoldenEye here.
That's right.
Okay. Carissa, where are you on this one?
I'm going to throw it to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is incredibly problematic. We didn't even talk about, there is a scene where so the villain has women of varying ethnic descent as weapons, and they feed them foods that are apparently of their places. So the Asian woman is eating rice, the Indian woman is eating naan, and there's a black woman, and all she's eating is bananas, and that's what's on her plate. This is problematic. It's possibly the most problematic scene in a very problematic film, but this is also a huge part of what the Bond franchise is and was. And I don't like the Brosnan Bond. I just find him really smarmy. So I'm voting against GoldenEye, also because all the boys I knew in college only played this game as a first-person shooter, and it was so boring for me. So
justice for not playing GoldenEye.
I know. Let's watch Mario Kart, really. If I'm going to watch somebody play a video game, I'd rather watch Mario Kart.
That's the correct choice. Agent Slater, please don't be upset with us, but I think I'm also voting for On Her Majesty's Secret Service here. And I'll tell you why.
No, it makes sense. I'm happy with that.
I will say, we the Blofeld of it all. To not have a Blofeld film in the final two feels wrong to me, and also the toboggan chase in On Her Majesty's Secret Service is amazing.
Lots of points for that.
So good.
Amen.
And then the 20-minute ski chase to get to the toboggan chase is so great. But I think the whole movie, yes, there's problematic elements of it, but I love this movie, and I think it does deserve to be here. GoldenEye is really, really good, and I agree with the comment that it was a pop culture phenomenon for Bond, and probably is the reason we still have Bond today, right? If that had not been successful, I don't think we still have Bond in the 21st century. But that gives us the final two of Casino Royale from 2006 versus On Her Majesty's Secret Service from 1969. I'm going to start with Agent Slater. Where are you on this one?
Oh, Casino Royale. Absolutely.
Carissa Kloss.
I think is wild that On Her Majesty's Secret Service is actually here. that alone delights me. But I'm voting Casino Royale here because we're talking about best Bond film, not most problematic, not most wacky, not most anything. And Casino Royale is slick and gorgeous and sophisticated and comes out punching and is kind of the epitome of what we're striving here. So Casino Royale wins it for me.
Michael Schwartz.
I think that Casino Royale really reinvigorated the franchise and what gives us the opportunity to have another Bond beyond Daniel Craig at this point. Depending on what they do there, it could be really pivotal to how the franchise moves forward for us. So, but I think that Casino Royale.
What I find so interesting is these are our two emo Bond movies, right? This is both of these movies end with a death of a woman who then haunts him for the rest of that Bond's life cycle. And I don't think it is a coincidence that both of these movies had such power in this bracket because they're both really effective and they cast a long shadow on the franchise. And one thing we barely touched on is this is a 60-plus-year-old film franchise. There is no other franchise in film that does this. And to be able to go back and see where it started in the 60s and the mores of the time, who the enemies were, what they looked for in a Bond woman, etc., to now, what an incredible cultural achievement this franchise is. And I'm so glad we had the chance to talk about it today. But there you have it, folks. Our pick for the best James Bond film is Casino Royale from 2006. Do you agree? Do you think we should have kept our opinions top secret? Tell us how you really feel by leaving a comment on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or Mastodon. While you're there, make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast. You can hear about what new debates are coming soon, vote in open polls, and even decide which topics we tackle next. I want to say thank you to my panel. You killed this episode, so that's one mark towards your 00 designation. And thank you for listening. If you loved what you heard, please consider supporting us on Patreon, where you can get even more exclusive content and you get episodes a whole day early. We hope you have a good one. And remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion. And James Bond will return to the great pop culture debate in Best James Bond theme song.